The United States of America has long been known for its massive military force, currently possessing 4 of the 10 largest air forces in the world, an almost $1 trillion yearly budget, and a navy that has as many aircraft carriers as every other country combined. It's easy to see just how immense of a force the US truly is. Yet, despite this grandiose display of might, America's military has a massive looming problem: the mental health of its troops. How could it be that US soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are 9 times more likely to die from suicide than the dangers of combat? These troops aren't just nameless bodies, but rather the fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, sons, and daughters of our own community. Those brave few who choose to serve our country should not be forgotten. Yet we've allowed for about 17 veterans to end their own lives every single day. We have neglected the needs of our veterans, and as their friends, family, companions, and those who they are fighting to protect, the burden lies on us to ensure they are properly taken care of. But what exactly is causing this, and what can we even do? In order to attain more information about our military's mental health, I've asked my buddy John, an ROTC cadet, if he could interview some of the soldiers who are currently in the position of teaching and building up the next generation of U.S. Army officers. Here's what they had to say.
My name is Doug Rohde. I'm a prior service active duty infantry officer, and I left active duty in 2022. Had a 2-year break in service, and now I'm back in the Army National Guard in Nebraska as a part-time job, and then here as my full-time job teaching the freshman and sophomore cadets in the Army RTC program.
I'm Master Sergeant Barber, been in the Army 17 years. I've served on every leadership position: team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, sat in Ops Sergeant Major C. Worked both echelons of FORSCOM and TRADOC, and back here in TRADOC at USAC, working with the ROTC cadets.
My name is Tom Slikas. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. I've been on active duty for over 20 years. Most of my assignments have been stateside. I've deployed a few times for contingencies and combat operations. I served as an infantry officer, as an all-source intelligence officer, and now I serve as the strategic intelligence officer.
With these men's combined 40-plus years of service as leaders in the U.S. military, I believe we can get a better idea of what's causing our service members to feel this way. Firstly, we need to figure out any possible root causes. After reviewing the interviews, I quickly came to find that one of the prevailing and repeated reasons for service members to fall into the clutches of addiction and depression is actually something I don't think many civilians easily recognize. Instead of the often thought of factors where a soldier's military experience poorly affect them, it became apparent that upon losing that deeper level of connection to their battle buddies, no longer having the military give them a sense of purpose, leaving the military and no longer having that connection actually caused vets to feel lost and question what to do with their lives. Here's what our interviewees had to say about that.
They don't realize how strong of a support system they have while they're in the military. Now they're out there alone, they don't have the same support system, they don't have the friends and the bonds that they built. They go down a dark path. They have this sense of community, they leave the community and they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to build a new one or join a new one or become ingrained in a new one, and they struggle because of it, and they underestimated it before they left the service.
I think they also struggle a little bit too, because there's not very many jobs on the civilian side that are as close-knit as you will find as the Army. Seeing the same people every day, interacting with them, being able to talk to them about different lives, and the tight-knit group that you get from the Army transitioning out to a different job is what sets it apart.
Post-service, veteran community, you can feel a gap, like a lack of purpose. Like I was part of something. I was part of Team America. I was a servant to my nation, and now I'm separated or retired, and I don't feel that purpose.
Caring about what you're doing every day. That's why, like I said, that's why I'm back in the Army, because I ultimately realized that being an infantry officer is one of the things that drives me for my purpose.
Another common response in the interview centered around many soldiers turning towards drugs, alcohol, and other addictive substances. While addictions are unfortunately not very rare within the military, these responses help to further paint a picture of warning signs within our soldiers.
The majority of what I saw was personal issues, right? And it compounded with drugs and alcohol, family issues that people thought they couldn't get out of, or they're having issues with their career.
Yet another indicator, which is significant drug and alcohol abuse. If you're aware of these indicators, you can intervene and stop. If you see this in your friend, like have the courage to ask them.
A lot of times people don't know what to do with the downtime, and as bad as it may say, a lot of people in the military will resort to some type of like abuse or some type of addiction, whether it be alcohol or nicotine, caffeine. It's just a slippery slope, and when leaders aren't engaged, more of those soldiers or more of those leaders kind of fall through the crack on that. Knowing your soldiers is a big thing to help prepare them when they come back for their mental state.
Substance abuse is a common trait amongst people with depression as a way to try and mitigate the negative emotions they are feeling. And while our interviewees explained what they, as Army leaders, look out for, this may be a valuable note for us non-service members to look out for as well. Here are some of the factors that these leaders take into consideration when looking out for their people.
I just got divorced. I missed a lot of work, and so now I'm going to get counseled. Like, whoa, you should be aware, like, these are triggers. And so if we're aware of these triggers, if we're educated about these triggers, we can intervene. You can tell when something doesn't seem quite right. An effective approach can just be listening. And just take the chance to listen. Be empathetic. It's a little bit of a 180, right? We want to be excellent. We want to be lethal. We want to be the global force for good. But we also want to be understanding, appreciate somebody else's perspective, right? We're all different. We all have different values. So if we're empathetic, maybe we are more approachable. You can't expect somebody to trust you to be listened to if you're not approachable. So as a leader, you should be approachable.
But I think just a casual conversation of like, hey, how's your day going? And you can gauge a lot off of someone by just asking them how their day's going. Like if you see me every day and like, hey, Master and Barbara, how's your day going? And I'm upbeat 90% of the time. Great. It's great to be here. We get PT today. We do this. And then the next day you ask me, it's like, I've had better days. I wish I wasn't here right now, right? So those cues as a leader, just by engaging with all your soldiers and kind of knowing their demeanor, right? Because you could go up to a soldier and be like, hey, how's your day going? And you're like, kind of sucks. But that soldier says that every day. You're like, oh, well, that's just normally him, you know? Like maybe we need to find a root cause, or maybe he's super excited about something and you're like, oh, that's a normal change. Then you kind of get into that, what are you so excited about? Normally they're down, and then they'll be ecstatic about something. And then you kind of know what their livelihood is and you get to know them. For example, you love running. I may have no interest in running as a leader, but if I can engage you about running and find what you're passionate about on your down day, I'm going to be like, hey, how'd your last run go, or whatever, to spark a conversation to keep it going a little bit. So I think it's very important to just engage with everybody you see every day.
Overall, it seems that military leaders do ensure that they are looking out for the safety of their troops. However, something else that I believe is important to cover is the question of how seriously the military, as an organization, actually takes suicide and its awareness. Something that has been displayed to me time and time again when around service members is the idea of esprit de corps. This is the idea that one should take pride in their service and uplift themselves as well as those around them within their organization. With such a massive issue and a strong emphasis on the concept of esprit de corps, one would hope that the military actually sets aside appropriate time and resources to take care of their disheartened troops. So let's get an idea of what these soldiers have to say about Big Army's position on the topic at hand.
I feel like we always catch a suicide a step too late. And I think that has to do with education and training. By all means, the Army and leaders take it very seriously. It's the last thing that we want to see. And there is education and training out there, but I think sometimes we as senior leaders, and including myself, because I've been a part of it, is like we use it as a check the block, and it's the wrong answer. We say we educate soldiers, but we don't ask for like a rebrief or a back brief on, do you actually understand what is available to you? What are the signs and symptoms from your battle buddy? And not asking them to be medical professionals, but just kind of having them understand what are some signs. Because I feel like a lot of times we get happy with the click of slideshows, or we get happy with, okay, we did this, took us 30 minutes, but can we really understand the intricacies of suicide awareness and suicide prevention within 30 minutes? Probably not.
I know there are resources available. I don't know if there are enough. I will tell you there are a lot. There are many anonymous tools. Military OneSource, you can get access to medical care, and it's completely anonymous. Your unit doesn't know about it. And then of course, right, we have this, I'm not sure how old it is, probably a few years, like this text, right? This suicide prevention text, the 988. So if you're worried about perceptions, right? If you're my leader, I'm worried about showing a chink in my armor, right? I'm not as tough as I'm portraying. Maybe I don't want to come to you. Maybe I perceive that you're going to judge me in a certain way. Try to have the courage to still trust your leader and go to them. But if you can't do that, try to find another resource.
Army takes it really seriously. Like it's, I mean, there's these things called SIRs, like serious incident reports, and company commanders have to report different incidents depending on what it is, right? So if a soldier says, I'm thinking of killing myself, I have a gun at my house, and if you let me go home, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, whoa, all right, let's get you to the hospital. And they get them to the treatment that they need, right? That event, right? That's a platoon leader calling a company commander calling a battalion commander, battalion commander calling a brigade commander. In some places, that's a division level notification. Like that's how serious the Army takes it. How the Army handles everything after that is the part that they're still working on.
The Army's also adopted this piece of holistic health and fitness. It's not just my physical fitness, right? There are these pillars of personal readiness, emotional, spiritual, social. Physical is one of them as well. And so if I go to these holistic health and fitness facilities, some units, they have a dedicated facility, so there's more access. And still other units, I think I've heard of it more on like the special operations side, is they actually have these resources in the same building. So if you're interested in avoiding a stigma, you can look like the tough soldier, go park your vehicle in the parking lot, grab your gym bag, because that is also a fitness center where they're going to have strength and conditioning coaches. And if that's the perception that you want people to see, you can go in there and maybe just take a right and you go talk to a behavioral health provider or a mental health provider.
Moving away from suicide awareness and looking at the SHARP, which is sexual harassment and response prevention, the Army has done a great job to put in live action scenarios into buildings where you go in and they have like a bar set up that shows what could actually happen if a soldier gets roofied, and those interactive models. I think we need more of that with suicide prevention, like maybe setting up a uncomfortable place where a leader goes in and asks a soldier, hey, are you going to commit suicide? That's the hardest question, is asking someone straight to their face, are you thinking about committing suicide? Have you thought about it? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And those are the realistic training. And I feel like if we could get real live action role players where leaders have to go in and ask those questions, and then it just kind of like spirals out of control, like, yes, I am, or whatever the case may be, or have a leader walk in on a soldier dumping pills down their throat, or have a handgun, or something that simulates a more realistic environment, or give that environment to soldiers to train in. I think you get more bone-chilling reaction, and I think the seriousness would turn up a little bit on suicide prevention if you put someone in those awkward stages.
With how prevalent of an issue mental health in the military is, I've come to find that every service member has at least one story about it. It truly seems that no service member has managed to retire and not be affected in some way by this heavy and long-lasting problem. And while I find that many shy away from relaying their more personal experiences, it was a nice surprise to see that these men cared enough about bringing attention to the topic that they were willing to share some of those more personal stories. To me, it's always seemed that one of the most overlooked steps in enacting change is not only bringing the topic into conversation, but communicating real-life stories in a way that others, who may not have any direct experience, can digest and use to come to a better understanding. As such, let's take a moment to listen to what these soldiers have to say about how suicide has affected them.
I wasn't there during the action, but I came in a week later after a soldier had committed suicide in one of the platoons I took over at Fort Hood, Texas. And the platoon was like in shambles, and I didn't know why. And then finally found out that a soldier committed suicide a week prior, and it was actually during Thanksgiving break. So we're kind of coming up on the anniversary of it. It's 8 or 9 years now. 8 or 9 years ago that this had happened, and no one's seen any signs of it. They said he was the best soldier in the platoon, was the best Bradley driver. One Thanksgiving even, he just said that everything was too tough with his family and they deserved better. So there was no signs at work or anything, and it was super unfortunate. And just the way it impacted all the soldiers, kind of impacted myself as well. And that's kind of when I was about a little bit shorter than midway through my career. That's kind of when the light bulb flicked for me. Suicide is a big deal, and it really means, and not that I didn't think it was a big deal before, but I had never been impacted the way I was impacted when I walked into that door to take over, which was my first platoon at the time. How it impacted the whole organization and how much that soldier was loved by everybody and just devastated. That was very eye-opening for me. And then that's when I kind of started digging more into resources, what's available, how could we have prevented this? And a lot of the leaders there that I worked with after the fact, they said that we don't know how we could have prevented it because this guy had no signs. Outstanding soldier, first to work, great at PT, last one to kind of leave, took care of his family, and it was just one of those things that we really don't know. And that's the really terrible thing about suicide, is you really don't know.
So I have had a couple soldiers that I served with try to take their life. It forced me to question, am I doing the right things as their leader? Could I have known that sergeant more? He was new to the unit, he'd been there for a few months. What could I have done differently to try to take care of him? It makes me think that, or reminds me to be mindful of my approach, right? Make sure that I'm clear, I'm level when I engage with servicemen and women. Hopefully I'm that way when I engage with people in my community. But being empathetic, even when somebody misses the mark, right? They don't perform honorably, still try to treat them with fundamental respect. And so you reflect, like, was there a trigger that I should have known? Was there a warning sign that I should have known? And so my takeaway from that tragedy is, just because somebody has a perception like all is well, maybe not everything is great.
When I was a company commander, one of our best NCOs took his own life, and he was the last one anyone would have expected for that to happen. Saw the effect it had on the whole company, and it was a difficult experience for sure. You know, there were multiple soldiers that I had in my command that were like, hey, you know, so and so expressed feelings of wanting to harm themselves, so we get them to the hospital, we get them to the care that they need, where professionals can give them the treatment that they need. Some of those people returned to duty and they were fine and went on, and it was a one-time thing. Other people have other mental health issues, and then once we got them on that path, they're able to, you know, successfully exit the military and go find something that worked with what they needed and with what their mental health state was.
5 months later, we were deployed to Korea. We were on a rotation to Korea. Same battalion, same squadron, same thing. No signs of a soldier, and that committed suicide as well. And again, within 6 months, 2 in the same squadron, there was a lot to be questioned of what was happening behind the scenes, maybe with some leaders, maybe with some underground pressure, like what was going on. And I think they were able to finally get some answers. I had transferred out of the organization, but I think they were able to get some answers. But again, nothing underlying that would have caused or, you know, questioned that soldier at that time. So I think conversation, again, going back to just talking to someone and seeing, like, hey, what's going on? But, you know, those are two that I'm comfortable sharing at this time.
With that said, we have one final question to ask. But instead of asking these soldiers, we need to turn towards ourselves and ask, what can we do? With such a depressing and difficult issue, it can be easy to forget that change can only happen if we take action. Simply sitting around won't allow for any change to be enacted. These men and women honor us by serving our country. As such, it's time we honor them. These are the fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, sons, and daughters of our community. And their battles don't suddenly stop when they get to take off their uniform and go home. We can only make change one person at a time. Therefore, start by listening, understanding, and showing compassion to those around you who have served. Oftentimes, showing appreciation for one's service goes further than you might imagine. It shows them that what they've done matters and that they matter. If you're a vet watching this, know that your service was important and that you are important. People do care, and if you're suffering, break the silence and call the Veteran Crisis Line by dialing 988 and pressing 1 for help. If you're not a vet, you can also call 988 to get help for anyone you know that may be in a dark state. We can't let those who've sacrificed so much for us disappear when we have opportunities in front of us to help. They choose to fight for us. As such, it's time we fight for them. If you don't personally know anyone who needs aid but would still like to help, there's a plethora of different charities you can either donate to or take part in. We owe our service members much more than a simple thank you for your service. We owe them action. Any action, small or large, will add up to a better future. It truly doesn't have to be something grandiose. Even just liking and sharing this video to bring more awareness to the issue can massively help to form change. Let's ensure our military knows their nation stands behind them.